about the essential characteristics of experimental research. Our objective for today's lesson is to explain the essential characteristics of experimental. As mentioned in our previous lecture, the two very important aspects unique about experimental research is that it is the only type of research that directly influences a particular variable, and it is the best type of testing hypothesis about the cause and effect relationship. So here are the essential characteristics of experimental research. So we have the comparison of groups, manipulation of independent variables, and control of extraneous. In an experiment, it usually involves a comparison of two groups. And the two groups now are the experimental group and the control group. So let us compare these two. So we call it as experimental group. It refers to the group that receives the treatment or the intervention that you're going to give to your students. While for control group, it refers to the group that receives no treatment, especially in medical researches or psychological researches. However, if we are talking about educational research, it is just simply called a comparison group, and it is use of traditional method or use of teachers usual method. In terms of the independent variables or manipulation of the independent variables, we actually have independent variables that can be manipulated and independent variables that can be manipulated. Examples of independent variables that can be manipulated are the amount of enthusiasm in teaching, the teaching method, the learning activities, type of assignments, materials used, type of counseling, and examples of independent variables that cannot be manipulated are profile variables such as the gender, ethnicity, age, and religious preferences. In terms of establishing the independent variables, we do actually have different forms. Number one is one form versus another. So in using this example, it can be a comparison of an inquiry method and a lecturing method in teaching subjects like chemistry, science. And then also, it can also be presence versus absence of a particular form. So in this form, for instance, a comparison of using PowerPoint and no PowerPoint in teaching statistics. And then the third one is varying degrees of the same form, which means that, example, the effect of the different degree of enthusiasms and the attitudes towards mathematics. So you will just vary the degree. Or it can also be use of materials like in first week, you will just use trivia. For example, the intervention is making use of trivia, one trivia in a week, and then another group will be two or more trivia in a week. In conducting research and using experimental research, researchers have an opportunity to exercise control. They determine the treatment, select the sample, assign subject of the study, and decide who will get the treatment and who will be the control. And also, they try to control other variables that might influence the outcome of the study. So extraneous variables are variables that might influence in a way the effect of the intervention or the outcome of the study. So here, the researcher can use randomization. So researchers try to use randomization whenever possible. This is one of the crucial ingredients in conducting experimental researches. Random assignment is similar to random selection. However, they are not that identical. So for random assignment, it means that every individual in the study has equal chance to be assigned in any of the group. While in random selection, it means that every member of the population has an equal chance to be selected as one of the subject of the study. So, moreover, there are three things that should be noted about random assignment of subjects to groups. So, the first one, it takes place before the experiment begins. Next, it is a process of assigning two groups, and it is done to create equivalent groups, and they differ only by chance. Here is the list of the most commonly used random selection. So we have simple random sampling, or it's commonly used and termed as random sampling technique. So we have simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. This will be discussed in a separate video. Here are the list of other essential characteristics of research or experimental researches. So the next one is holding certain variables constant. So researchers eliminate possible variables that can affect the study. So for example, if the researchers think that it is affected by gender, he or she can control this by considering females only or males only in the study. However, this will limit the study in generalizing this result because it will only be true for either male or female group. And then next, building the variable into the design. This is the opposite of holding certain variables. It will consider both male and females in the study and it affects both sexes on the outcome. Next, so we have matching. So pair subjects in one group and another based on certain variables of interest. Example, if the researcher wants to pair age because he or she thinks that this can influence the outcome, so he or she might match students according to age and assign one member of each pair. And then next, using subjects as their own control. The performance of the same group in the two treatments is being compared. Example, same class taught using inquiry method and lecture method. And then, using analysis of covariance. So this can be used to equate groups statistically on the basis of pretest or other variables. So that it will, of course, control now the effect of this in the post-test. So it might be that the student already know the topic and then, of course, he obtained already high score in the pretest and then high score in the post-test. Or it can also be the case that the student got high score in the pretest and low in the post-test. So this can be controlled using analysis of covariance.